Hey guys, Mike here. Welcome to episode 10 of The Rookie Hunter. On this episode, Kelly and I are joined by our good friend and hunting partner, Kevin Snider. Kevin provides training in the safe handling and use of handguns, so he's going to share some of his experiences and also share some stories from his journey as a rookie hunter. We're also going to revisit the wolf call debate and condense our views on this tough subject. We're also going to talk about camo, and I'm sure the bear hunt's going to make its way into the conversation as well. Our website is now live. It's therookihunter.com. From there, you can find links to our social media sites, all of our contact information, gear suggestions. It's all up there, so go check out therookihunter.com. So you know what to do. Sit back, relax, crack a cold beer, and enjoy episode 10 of The Rookie Hunter.
This beer's good. It's tasty.
It is very good. On that note, welcome to episode 10 of The Rookie Hunter. My name is Mike Peterson.
Kelly Mullner.
And today we've got a guest. It's our good friend, hunting partner, brother-in-law, Kevin Snider is joining us today.
Hello.
So thanks for joining us, Kev.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You've heard the podcast, so you know what you're in for. It's not going to be a surprise, luckily. So Kev, you're... I'm going to call you a firearms specialist. And I guess what you do is training for handguns. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a specialist, but...
I'm going to call you one anyways.
But I'm very well versed in one particular firearm. I didn't really take a great interest in firearms before.
Right.
Getting into this area, but my interest has grown, and I'm sort of more interested at this point, especially after starting hunting.
Yeah. We'll probably come back to your sort of how you got into it after we get through some of this intro stuff, but I'd be curious to... I kind of know a little bit of how you got into it, but I don't know the full story because I wasn't really involved with you getting into hunting, so we'll come back to that one. We'll just get some of our usual stuff out of the way. Podcast is doing well again in iTunes, so as always, thanks to everybody who's downloading the show. I think as we're recording this, we're number 2 in outdoor podcasts, which is pretty sweet. So we're right up, above some of our favorite podcasts, which is pretty cool.
It's awesome.
I think we're right next to the Meat Eater podcast, and anyone who's listened knows that we've mentioned Stephen Ranella quite a bit. So obviously it's not a competition to get ahead of him, but as somebody who we respect, it's cool to see that people are downloading the show, and we're right next to something that we really enjoy too. So if anyone wants to support us in any way, you can just continue subscribing to the show. You can leave ratings and reviews, share it through social media. All that stuff goes a long way, because to market a podcast and to kind of get above all the rest of this shit is kind of difficult, right? So people have been doing that for us, and it's gone a long way for us. So thank you very much for doing that. Any other stuff you want to note from the last, I guess it's been a couple of weeks since we've been in here? Mm-hmm. We did get out for a couple more bear hunts, or one at least.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing sign. It's just a matter of seeing a bear, which we did see the first. We saw a bear on the first trip, but we haven't seen any in the last couple.
Yeah, we've seen lots of tracks, which is promising, and lots of fresh ones, but no bears. One of the sets of tracks we saw was accompanied by a cup, so that's another one that we wouldn't be able to go after, but we have seen some solo ones too. So, So we'll keep going out there, and I think hopefully persistence is going to pay off for us, and we'll get something.
I wonder, in our area, the Okanagan, we've had an early spring, and it seemed like everything kind of greened up pretty fast. I kind of wonder if, and I've read this on Hunting BC forums and places like that, where people think that it's actually slower this year for the bears. They're not seeing as many, and they're almost wondering if the bears don't have to go out to expose themselves to find the food,
right,
where they can get the food in these smaller, safer areas, because there's just more of it this year. So I don't know if there's a lot of truth to that or not, but that's kind of what I was hearing.
Kind of makes sense. The one that we saw was, buried back in that clearing quite a ways. it's kind of an overgrown area, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good thing. I didn't even see it, and you were just luckily looking in the right direction when we drove by. So
Yeah, I mean, we almost drove on top of it.
yeah, pretty much.
There's a point where if it's next time I see a bear, I was thinking, okay, how far is it away? And then I would make a decision as to whether or not I would tell you if I saw a bear. Because if it was 5 or 10 feet away, I'd just turn my head the other way and we just keep driving. Because your instinct is there's a bear, shut the quad off, right?
Yeah.
Or stop the quad and get off. If it's that close, I don't want that to happen.
Good times.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, other than that, no real news to report. We got a couple of emails. One of the ones we got was from Andrew Ransom, and he's another new hunter. He got his core and his pal in 2014, which is that the same year as us?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He also had we did have a successful 2050, but he did not. He's in his mid-30s and had no hunting background. Interesting part is he grew up in Australia and came over here, and he said it's a very anti-hunting culture in Australia, which I had no idea. So coming over here, he said he completely changed his views on hunting, largely through a strong interest in food and where it comes from. So now he's doing it to feed his family, and pretty much the exact same reasons why all three of us are doing it. So that's kind of cool, and he's finding this podcast useful because he doesn't have a mentor, so he likes to kind of check in and learn from our mistakes, which is our goal with this thing. So
yeah, it's interesting because all these people, including us, that get more interested in food and then they start gravitating to hunting. It's like this whole push to green energy, more electric cars.
Yeah.
There's all the provinces are signing off on these new initiatives now to reduce emissions. But it's funny, they're interesting that one of the side effects of that is people kind of going back to their roots, and like instead of buying industrialized meat products, and like people are educated now, obviously, about some of that stuff, and they're kind of looping back to the old way of being self-sufficient. But yeah, I guess I'm going into the, like a lot of folks say, we got to go green, but the ultimate going green is kind of living out in the woods in a teepee, right? And I don't think most people are equipped for that. And if you look at like North Korea from a map up above, a satellite image, there's very little light compared to like the rest of the countries around it. It's almost like just a black, like there's not a lot of stuff going on there.
right.
So like that's green, right? They're not really using any energy. They're I don't know how much hospitals and everything else they got going on and all this stuff that uses the energy. But yeah, I don't know. I just find it interesting that the push to green, I think, is almost what is affecting a lot of these, or influencing these people to go back to hunting and to go back into nature and do all that stuff, because that is the ultimate going green, right?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So I want to get something out of the way here quickly. Cal, you put up a thread on the Hunt BC forum a while back and just kind of letting people know what we were doing. It was funny, nobody really responded for quite a while, and then we started to get some feedback on there, and it's all been positive, but I welcome, constructive criticism and stuff like that too. So it was only 2 comments, so it's not like it's a big deal, but I wanted to sort of clarify some of our views. So no need to name these guys. I don't know if they would want to be named or not, but the first guy said he lost us on the disagreeing with the wolf call /hunt. And then another guy followed right after him saying he found himself skipping through it and not too excited about it. He's more of a video picture guy. And he said the wolf comments were slightly uneducated. So whatever, I'm 100% open to any criticism. So I don't see it as a bad thing. Yeah. But if somebody's commenting on anything we're doing, and you say you disagree with us, or you're not into what we're saying, I would appreciate some sort of backing. So share your opinion with us. So if you think
keep
we're wrong
the
on this
discussion
thing,
going, kind of.
yeah, exactly. So
that everybody can take something from it, kind of.
yeah, I totally respect their opinions, but I don't really know what they are because they didn't say. So we're here to learn, and educate me on what I'm missing if I'm missing something as far as the wolf call goes. So I wanted to clarify my point of view. I went back and checked out the episode, and I think we did cover it. I'm gonna go out and saying that it was uneducated. We did a lot of research. In fact, you had the 20-page document, which was the BC management plan for wolves. So it's not like we just came in here and said whatever was on our minds. We did do quite a bit of research, so I'm gonna skip that one. But let's just quickly clarify it. I don't want to spend too much time on it because we've already covered it in episode 2. Basically, where I'm at is I never said I disagreed on hunting of wolves. I'm just not interested in it. My main reason for hunting is for meat, and that's it. So I'm just not interested in it. If somebody wants to hunt wolves, they're more than welcome to. I have no problem with it. I wouldn't hold it against them in any way. As far as the cull goes, my main concern with that was that habitat protection wasn't being addressed as much as I think it should be. So to me, it's until you cover every aspect of protecting caribou habitat or their population, then you're not doing the full thing. And maybe that's the missing link that's really going to help the caribou population. The other thing I'm not interested in is the use of strychnine poisoning because that affects other animals out there. So I just feel like it's too murky. And there's also the influence from industry, which is the BC forestry industry. I've read stuff about them being involved in those decisions. So that's where I stand. Is pretty straightforward.
Ranchers?
Yeah.
Do ranchers come into that at all?
No, we sort of touched on that, and that's something I haven't really researched.
Yeah, I don't think we're that educated in that piece.
You might be. We'll come around to what
Not
you
really.
think. No?
More just opinionated, but
Yeah.
I'm probably uneducated on it as well. So
Okay, well, Kev, since you're our guest, what are your thoughts on the wolf call? You heard the episode, so I'm curious to hear.
yeah, I thought as far as you guys being educated, I learned a lot from it personally. Things that I never knew before, and opened my mind to both sides of the conversation. So I'm kind of on the fence as well.
Right.
Personally, as far as hunting a wolf, I don't see myself doing it either. And as far as the cull goes, I think you guys touched on it a little bit as far as the woodland caribou. Is that sometimes I just wonder if there are some species that aren't going to survive in today's age. We can pour as much money as we want into saving a certain species, but at the end of the day, they're not built for the climate or for the changing habitat. So
Yeah. Provided that we do everything in our power, like if we're having an influence on their populations, and I think we need to try and do that. But I think you're right, man. It's like, I don't know, sometimes things just aren't cut out in the world. So
sad to say.
I know it's not something you want to think of, but
and most of the reason for that could be humans, right? But that's at this point, it is what it is. Which, I mean, I don't know if I like that saying a lot. It is what it is, but it kind of is, right? And my thing with the wolf call, I don't know if I made it perfectly clear in that podcast, but I feel like there's so many different aspects that are all kind of competing with one another, and different people will have different amount of importance or significance based on their experiences in their life and where they live and all that kind of stuff. So everybody's kind of looking at it through their own lens. But for me, I think that if if there's habitat loss and all of this stuff that's happened already, and it's putting animals in danger, and we have to do wolf calls and all that difficult decisions to, as like a interim measure, while we fix the main problems, like I'm okay with that. I think I'm a little more on the okay with the wolf cull, even though it's a very hard decision.
Yeah.
And I don't think the people that made that decision think it's an easy one. But on the other hand, like you say, if there's business involvement and influence, then obviously I have a problem with that. I'm kind of coming at it from, I'm hoping that the province does things for the right reasons.
Yeah.
So I'm trusting them with that. Right. So, yeah. And as far as hunting a wolf myself, I don't know if I would go out either to specifically hunt a wolf. If one crossed my path, I think I would be a little more on the hunting them side than the two of you, just from our discussions.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like, okay, you shot this wolf. Now what do you do with it? Right. And I don't know if I want to go through with all of that. Like, you're not just going to shoot a wolf and leave it there, is my understanding. I don't think you're allowed to. I think you got to take it's a fur bearing animal, I believe.
Yeah. I think that, I don't know. I honestly don't know what else you use it for.
Yeah. I mean, you bring the fur in and that's pretty much it. I don't think you can eat them. So,
I'm sure
I kind of get
you
that.
can, but I'm
that
not going
point.
to. Yeah, I don't think.
So,
Yeah.
I guess on the spectrum of do we agree with the wolf cull or not? I think I'm a little more on the agree with it side, but only from a holistic view of the greater good of the animals that I want to continue to hunt.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want them to disappear, and I know wolves will survive no matter what.
Yeah. If I think maybe some of the problem with the guys that commented is they likely didn't listen to the whole thing. So
Yeah.
if they made it to the end, they would have heard us sort of come around to the idea a little bit more.
Yeah, we were grappling with it at the end. Like, we were kind of all sitting on the fence by the time we got to the end.
The comparison we used was like being in the Okanagan, devastation from wolves isn't really, we don't see it. But say it changed. I'm just repeating what our conversation was.
Mm-hmm.
And we were seeing our deer population go down significantly. We were seeing, carcasses and all that kind of shit. And we knew it was wolves.
Mm-hmm.
Then things would change, right? But there's just nothing in front of us that would make us necessarily change our minds or 100% support it. So
And
for anyone
it could
who
be
lives,
different for other people.
Yeah.
So
it all depends. And so anyways, I hope those guys listen to this. We'll post a link to it on the Hunt BC forum. And please do, just let us know why you think the way you do. And I really like to read both sides of the story. So any news articles you want to send me and Kelly, then please do, because that's kind of the stuff that, might change our mind, or maybe we'll just stay exactly the way we are.
yeah.
I want to make it clear that we do research these things quite a bit, but always open to input, be it good or bad. I don't really care. That's why we're doing it, is to learn stuff.
Yeah, be objective and take everything into account.
So I think, we try and look straight down the middle with all these things that are sort of controversial. And I don't know. I don't think there's anything more to say about it. But I put up on our message board, there's a thing on the wolf call. So if anybody wants to go there, they can go to therookyiehunter.com and post any comments on there, or they can do it on the Hunt BC forum too. So that's it for me on that one. Anything else you guys want to add to it?
I was just thinking maybe the missing part of the conversation is what's caused the increase in the wolf population anyway. Does it coincide with the increase in human population? Probably. You look over the last 150 years in BC, spread of humans throughout the landscape and taking natural habitat over and introducing domestic animals into wild habitat. I think that probably has a lot to do with it. But
yeah, you're kind of forcing these animals in wintering area. Like, we're reducing. I think what I didn't understand before I was a hunter was that animals just don't stay in the same spot all year, right? They have to find a wintering range. And if humans are taking all that wintering range up, then they're getting reduced to these smaller areas. And then the wolves are hanging out there waiting for them, right? Or maybe it's easier hunting for them. But the other thing with the wolves that I find interesting is I don't think it's easy to hunt them. I don't think it's easy to find them. I don't think you can, like, I've listened to a couple other podcasts. The guy said he's been out 4 seasons. He's never even seen a wolf. He's been hunting them specifically.
Wow.
So I wonder if that's why they have to resort to these helicopter type situations, right? I think we touched on that in the podcast, but yeah, I think Kevin's onto something there too. Like, there's so many factors.
I think one of the things we said too was that, like, because we're not hunting these wolves, we're also sort of part of the problem, right? Every population of these animals needs to be controlled in some way or another. Yeah. So it kind of is in our hands to take care of conservation and keep all the populations in check. But I think, I'm kind of guessing, but I feel like maybe the majority of hunters aren't going to bother with wolves. So
yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
It's like the management plan is the BC Wildlife Federation managing the hunters.
Right.
And the cull is them actually managing the animals. So if the hunters aren't going to take advantage of the management plan, then they got to pick it up somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a tough one.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think we need to say any more about it, but we may or may not come back to this topic, but I think for now we've beaten it to death. So, Kevin, what's on tap today?
We have Whistler Brewing Company Whiskey Jack Ale.
Kel, I think he just took over your job. You see how quick he was on that?
Yeah. I never have the bottle.
It's good. Where's this one from?
That would be
Whistler, obviously, right?
Whistler, yeah.
Yeah, cool. You never know. Sometimes they call it something and do it somewhere else. Yeah, it's tasty though.
Yeah.
Is this a favorite of yours,
Whistler
Kev?
Brewing Company, brewed in Weimar, BC.
It could be Vancouver. Fuck you guys.
I do like Whistler beer, actually. I have had this before, but it's nice to pick it up again after not trying it for a while.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So I've got a few things I want to go over today, but Kev, fill us in a little bit about you. I'm kind of interested because I've never really talked to you too much about it with the firearms training. I don't know how much you want to go into it, but what kind of stuff are you doing with the guys? So these are all people who are handling handguns for the first time, or?
A little bit of both. So first time users, it is work related, and I'm not going to say too much about what I do for work, but
that's fine.
We do handle the firearms as part of our job. So obviously we have to be proficient with them and handle them safely, and shoot pretty well too. So
right.
So yeah, as far as training first time users who haven't handled the firearm or shot before, and getting them up to proficient levels, and then as well maintaining their skills throughout the years. Every year we have to qualify with a certain score and make sure that all our handling and safety is up to snuff. So
that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Are there common questions that you get from people who are coming in for the first time?
The new shooters are usually pretty focused on their scores and how they're hitting the targets. And
right.
To be honest, that's the last thing that I really care about. I'm more worried about whether they're handling the guns safely and being responsible with them. So aiming and hitting the targets properly will all come. It's certainly a skill that you have to practice and maintain. But again, the safety is the big aspect for me.
That's good. There is a lot to consider the first time you handle a firearm, because it's not just pulling the trigger, right? And I don't know, I always find like there's a lot going through your head when you've got something that is capable of killing somebody or doing a lot of damage, right? So I don't know, have you seen any, like the first shots, what do those usually look like when they're firing it for the very first time?
They can be all over. They can be dead center of mass, perfectly placed, or and from a brand new shooter too. Or they can be going off the wall or the floor 10 feet in front of them. So it's really, pardon the pun, hit and miss. But
what are some of the main differences you've seen between a handgun and a fire, like a rifle?
The thing about the handguns is that the barrel is so much shorter, and the distance between your front sight and your rear sights are that much closer. So there's less margin for error, and your accuracy over a longer distance is going to be reduced because of that. So firing a handgun accurately takes a lot more kind of relaxation. Not that using a rifle doesn't, but just being relaxed and every little twitch or movement is gonna throw off your placement of that bullet that much more. So.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
Any advice for somebody who's going to be handling a firearm for the first time? Because I'm sure there's lots of guys who are listening to this and haven't actually gone out hunting yet or handled a rifle. Any safety tips you would want to pass on to those guys?
Well, we go over the 4 rules of firearm safety, and the big one is assume that every firearm's loaded until you yourself prove it otherwise. Doesn't mean that every time someone hands you a rifle, if you're standing right there, you're watching them handle it, you know it's loaded or whether it's unloaded.
Right.
But before you do anything to manipulate the bolt or anything, you got to prove it to yourself that firearm's safe, right?
And that's an acronym in our, is that just a BC acronym, the prove?
Wasn't it axe and prove or something like that?
Yeah. So your axe would be assume every firearm is loaded. C is control the muzzle direction at all times. T, trigger finger must be kept off the trigger and out of the trigger guard. And S is see that the firearm is unloaded, which that cues you into prove, which is...
Wait for it.
Point the firearm in the safest available direction. Remove all cartridges. Observe the chamber, verify the feeding path, and examine the bore. So that's our Canadian firearm safety, the 2 main acronyms.
So we had to memorize those as part of the core and PAL program.
Yeah.
But
the action becomes second nature.
That's what I was going to say.
It's just it's remembering the actual acronym that's the tough part.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, sorry, what else?
Hunting, it's a big one, knowing your target and knowing your background, right? As far as the legality of what you're shooting, whether it's got antlers or not, or the proper number of tines or whatnot. And then your background, there's lots of other hunters out there dressed in camo, and you've got to make sure that that's an animal.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So
That it. I guess probably the best recommendation for anybody who is doing this on their own is to go to your local range and meet up with guys and ask for help if you're not sure or whatever. 'Cause like we've said before, there's a million guys out there that are willing to help rookie hunters out and mentor them. All you have to do is ask, and the forums are an excellent place to do that. There's actually usually it's a sticky at the top of the forums, guys looking for people to hunt with and that. So that's probably the best place to go.
And ranges are great. You got nice tables, nice controlled environment, safe direction, berms and backstops and everything. And it's a great controlled place to go. So,
Kev, what got you into hunting? When did it start?
My early hunting experiences started with my dad and my uncles, bird hunting, duck hunting in the Columbia Valley between Golden and Spill Machine, I guess. Little dot on the map, basically. Sorry, anyone who lives in Spill Machine, but beautiful, beautiful area, especially in the fall when we would hunt ducks. You'd have the snow-capped Purcells and Rockies, and then the nice kind of orangey golden glow of the grasses and everything on the valley floor, and just beautiful. So yeah, a lot of good memories with my uncles and my cousins and my dad, spending days out on the sloughs, and not always being that successful, but always having a crack at a few ducks, and the excitement of seeing some fly over and the calls and everything. And so those are my early memories. And then didn't really have any experience with big game until I met your sister.
Right.
And started hanging out with your dad up in the caribou.
Yeah.
And him being a big hunter, of course, started getting me interested in it. And one fall before I had my license and had done the Corps and everything, I went up with him and a friend of his that and just spent time with them while they were out hunting. They had a moose draw
Nice.
up there, and they were unsuccessful throughout the week or so that I was up there. But just being out there early in the morning, seeing all the different wildlife, something about being on top of a mountain when the sun's coming up is just, you can't match it. And so
Yeah.
I was hooked right there. And
Was that the year that I was with you? Was that a year?
I think that was the year
after?
after, maybe.
Cool.
Yeah.
Because at that point, I didn't have my hunting license, but as soon as you said that, being on top of a mountain, the sun's coming up, I just had an image of us being out there in the caribou, and we watched a cow moose with two calves running across this big clear cut
Right.
as the sun
Yeah, I
was
remember
coming
that.
up, and you were looking for a deer, I think.
Yeah.
Would have been mule deer up there. And we've talked about that before, that those are some of the most rewarding moments of being out there. Even a kill is obviously what the main goal is, but just seeing that shit is really rewarding, in my opinion, anyways.
Yeah.
It's what keeps you going out, as long as you're seeing animals, even if it's not what you're
Right.
after. Yeah. Seeing cool shit when you'd otherwise be at home sleeping because you're up early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say, well, why do you have to hunt? Why don't you just hike or camp? But it's different. Like, you don't have the motivation to get out there for that sunset at 5 a.m, right? Like, you can go hike it and camp it, but you're going to have a different experience. There's just no two ways
Right.
around it.
Right.
And it's it's very cool experience to, like what you guys just were talking about.
And there's a purpose to it too, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that you got to be quiet and you hear all those sounds that you wouldn't normally hear, and
Yeah, you're tuned in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your first kill.
Was a 4-point whitetail buck,
Nice.
and that I took that in the Ponderay
Mm-hmm.
near trail, and that was with your dad too. So we had 2 days of hunting. Had gone over there for the weekend and planned to hunt because the whitetails were still open. It was November 11th, Remembrance Day.
Nice.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, we spent the first day pretty much road hunting on the quad. Stopped a couple times and sat and glassed and whatnot. And very beginning of the second day, we're climbing up these switchbacks and come around a corner, and there's this buck standing on the road. And so your dad, of course, sees it far before I do. And so he stops the quad and he says, "I'm just going to wait here. You go ahead." And so I go around the corner. He's out of sight. And this buck, again, is exactly 100 yards away. Just stopped in the middle of the road, facing away from me. And so I went down on a knee. I didn't have any rest or anything. And put my elbow on my knee, lined up the shot, but I didn't have a shot because his ass end was facing me. And so I whistled once, and it kind of looked over its shoulder at me, and then whistled again, and it turned broadside, and Perfect just took the shot.
Nice.
And yeah, I just remember it dropped quite quickly right in the ditch on the side of the road. So
That's always good.
yeah,
When they go down right away.
yeah,
That's the best case, yeah.
I mean, the reason for that was it wasn't the perfectly placed shot. It ended up going through the spine, so it wasn't going to go too far, I guess. But and then after that, all the work began.
Yeah.
Right. So
Explain that.
there's that brief moment where you're just like, "Oh my god, okay, that just happened."
Yeah.
Whatever. Oh, and then the cool thing was, like, your dad comes up because he heard the shot. Comes up behind me, and I give him the thumbs up, and he's just like jumping up in the air trying to contain himself. So that was pretty cool. It was a great memory.
I'm glad that you got to go out there with Dale and get your first animal.
Obviously never forget it.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially since it's the only animal I've actually taken up to this point, and that was coming on 4 years ago, I think. So
Wow, it's going back.
it's time for another.
Yeah.
So it's probably more than that, Kev. I think? Could be 5.
Could be.
You're getting fucking old, Kev.
Yeah, why don't we make it 6?
Can I ask how long the trip was in the Ponderay? Was that just a day trip, or was it like a multiple day type thing?
No, just a day trip. So both days
Okay.
we kind of parked by the dam and kind of drove out along that terrible road.
You're right.
Kev, what did you guys do with the meat from that one?
So we took the whole deer back, put it on the front of the quad and then in the truck and back to your folks' place and hung it from that birch tree
Nice.
down by the beach. And we skinned it there, and then left it there overnight to harden up, and because it was pretty cold, and then quartered all the meat and froze it in baggies.
Right.
And from there, I took the meat to a butcher and had it processed into sausages and pepperoni.
Nice.
Yeah, tasty.
Freezing and preparing the meat, we learned something when we got our whitetail cow. So we just threw it into Ziploc bags and threw it in the freezer. And sort of all the extra trimmings that we had, they were starting to get to a point where they were getting freezer burnt.
Mm-hmm.
So we learned afterwards, correct me if I'm wrong, but sort of the best way to do is to get it was it saran wrap and get it all really tight and then do wax paper?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the way to go for red meat. I don't think you have to vacuum pack. That's more for fish and stuff.
Okay.
But with red meat, if you can wrap it up in saran, get it super tight, try to get the air out, and then wax paper. But the tough part about the trimmings is it's tough to get all the air out. It's just a clump of meat, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I kind of think with the trimmings, it's best if you just can process a lot of it. Like I know you're saying it's nice to do sausages fresh and stuff like
Right.
that, which I totally agree with. I'd wonder how much of those trimmings you want to just keep in the freezer because it will go bad faster.
Right.
I think it's just impossible to get as much of the air out, but
Yeah, I guess just keep an eye on that shit so you don't
Yeah.
lose it. I think if we had left that stuff another month or two, it probably would have been pretty freezer burnt, but we got at a point it was totally fine once we thawed it out. But Randy, your father-in-law, kind of pointed that out to you and made sure we did something with it right away.
well, he was in the process of filling our freezer up with all this fish because he goes offshore fishing twice a year. So every time he comes up, he opens up the freezer and just starts dumping stuff into which is awesome.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
he's picking up all these other bags like, hey, what are you doing with this? It's got a little freezer burn there. So
Giving a shit.
a week later, we ended up turning it all into sausage.
Yeah.
So yeah, kudos to him for catching that. But
So that's what I was going to say there before we got cut off. The three of us are going to do a hunt in the park this year. We're not naming the park, and I saw somebody commented on being careful about hunting in parks and that firearms allowed in this park. We're able to hunt in there. We're 100% sure about that. So
Yep.
I don't know who made that comment, but don't worry. We checked, and it's sort of it's not a common area, but it's a well-known area.
But just to make a note there, you should check every provincial park or regional park you're in because the rules will be different across the board. Each one will have its own.
Yeah. Yeah,
Anyways.
for sure. So anyways, I'm hoping that when the three of us and probably one more guy, which would be Landon, go out, that, well, first of all, we're successful, but it's going to be nice to have 4 guys working on an animal, especially if we get something like an elk, and we'll see what that workload is like because a small whitetail like we had last year was manageable between 2 guys. We might get into bigger animals if we get a moose or an elk and decide that it's too much work and we want to give it to a butcher, but I think I would like to do as much as we possibly can within reason because it just feels so much more rewarding to do it. And but I guess we'll find out what happens. But anyways, I'm looking forward to that trip. We still have to kind of book it and make plans and pick a date. I think we're thinking September, Kev.
Yeah, that sounds good. Get something early in the day so we have lots of light to work with too.
Yeah.
The good thing about having those multi-day trips is, I guess we can always make do regardless. But like when Mike and I go out, we're going out in the evening for bear, and then you got to go to work the next day, and it gets to a certain hour of the day where you're like, ooh, if we get something in this next hour,
Yeah.
it's going to be a tough evening and it's going to be a tough morning.
We'll be, you'll be calling in sick and I'll be canceling everything I have in here. So
Yeah. It's short notice vacation day.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember watching, I can't remember what show it was, but a hunting show, and the guy was bow hunting for bear, and he hit one, but it was near dark. It was last shooting light, and he ended up, because it was cold enough, it must have been a fall hunt, but he left it overnight because he just said, I'm not going into a dark bush after a bear, not knowing if he's dead or not, right? So it's like, it's cold enough, I'll leave it till morning and come back with somebody else, and we'll find it. So
yeah, a little bit sketchy.
Yeah.
Hopefully you come back and it's still there.
Right, yeah. Or maybe you reconsider taking the shot in the first place, but I guess it's all up to experience and how comfortable you are doing that, right?
Mm-hmm. When we took the core and pal thing, so what is it, a half hour after sundown you've got for big game stuff, right?
You can shoot legally, I think, half hour after sundown.
It's an hour for ducks and shit like that, I think. Isn't it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, we should double check that. But
I think it's the opposite.
is it? It's an hour? Because
I think it's an hour after sunrise and then half an hour before
maybe
sunset.
that's what it is.
I'm
Okay,
pretty
that
sure
makes sense.
It's opposite, but I don't know.
Maybe
We'll just scratch this whole section for the podcast.
We'll double check
I
that one.
remember the core test had like a trick question on it.
Yeah, and that's where my
stumped me up.
yeah.
Anyways,
We're not upland, we're not waterfowl hunters. So.
We're not, anyways. So, when we were out last time, Kel, on the quad there, we were within a half hour of sundown, and it was too fucking dark. Even like if we had saw something at that point, I would really have to think about it, because even 10 minutes after sundown, in some areas you get into a little basin and it's way darker down there than it is somewhere up top that still has a bit of reflecting light or whatever.
I think it's definitely a bit of a guideline.
You have to use your best discretion for that.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things they told us too. So just because you can doesn't mean you should. And fuck, if you have to go out and find the thing and it's super dark, that's going to suck.
Especially like Kevin said, if it's a bear or a predator, you don't want to be chasing something like that into an area when you don't know if it's dead or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
day or light or night, but at night would be even worse.
Totally. Cal, Kevin, anything you want to add to your rookie hunting career? You might be past the rookie stage.
It's exciting to know that, I mean, you guys are doing it, and there's other guys, a couple buddies from the coast who got into it around the same time as me too, and
cool.
Knowing that there's a generation of hunters our age who are who are learning, right, but who are excited to do it. So
you start to find out that you think that most guys get into it as youth hunters and continue on, but I think the story is the same for a lot of guys who are getting into it at the same age as us, so in our 30s or late 20s or whatever it might be. So it's kind of cool that there's this whole new wave of older dudes getting into it.
Yeah. And are you ever not a rookie hunter?
No.
Because we hunt public land, right?
Yeah.
So it's a different experience every time you go out.
I think that's one of the things I always meant to mention about the name of the podcast is like, when you and I were talking about it, you're like, well, should we call it the Rookie Hunter? Because maybe,
to change the name.
Yeah, once we've been doing it for a while, maybe we're not going to be rookies anymore, or maybe it'll discourage people from listening. But I think even the most experienced hunter should, consider themselves a rookie in some aspect of hunting. You could be a professional at one area of hunting, but I think everybody's always got something to learn from being out there. And I teach from this studio here, And one of the things I learn a lot from is teaching. And sometimes you get guys who are coming in here that don't know anything about audio, and they ask me these questions that I've never fucking thought about before. And it totally changes the way you look at, your trade. So I hope that, even the experienced guys that listen to this, maybe will shift the way they approach things or bring up something they've never thought of. So I think everybody should consider themselves a rookie hunter for as long as they're doing it. And that just means you're open to learning shit. So that's my thought on it.
Totally.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Anything else you guys want to add? I've got another topic we're going to go over here, and I think Kev's going to be excited about this one.
Ooh.
On our message board, we had a lot of people who were really interested in the 2-part gear episode that we did, and I'm glad we did that one because that was fun, and I think we got a lot of new guys checking out the show because of that one. So there was quite a few comments on episode 7, and one of the guys, just let me find it here, he put his name as Sneeze. He said, "Hey, just found the podcast and really enjoyed the gear recommendations. Interested to hear more about clothing. What do you need, camo versus non, etc., versus what is nice to have." So we've talked about it a couple of times very briefly, whether or not, we think camo is completely necessary. I'm sort of on one end of it, Kelly in the middle, Kevin might be on the other end. I have no idea, but
I'm kind of on the I'll take any advantage I can possibly get side. But the reason that I am on, I don't know, I still struggle with the camo versus the solids, but it's mainly a financial thing.
Right.
So I don't want to buy one jacket for walking around and one jacket for hunting. That's where it gets hard. But if I had unlimited resources, all my hunting stuff would be camo just to get that 0.01% advantage.
Yeah.
But
So I put this question up. We'll talk about it after I go through some of these because there's some good points here. But I've signed us up on a few different forums, and it's kind of cool. It's good to be on the BC forum, and we're a part of the Alberta one as well. But I've been checking out like New Zealand. There's an Africa one I put us on, and another one in Texas. So I was kind of looking for any ones that had a lot of activity on, because that's where you're going to learn the most shit. And especially if guys are going after different species and different terrain and stuff like that, hopefully there's something you can gain from it. So I posted camo versus no camo on the Alberta forum and also the Texas one. I thought it'd be interesting to see what the Texas guys had to say. And it's continuous. They're still commenting on it now, so there's a ton of shit. We'll put up a link on our show notes on the website. But so I just took a couple from both of them, and Bobo the Clown was the first comment that I took, and
It's a Howard Stern reference, I believe.
is it? So he said camo in Texas is not so much needed, but he said if it buys you 5 more seconds for an elk or a muley, that might be all you need to, what do you say, get an arrow in the boiler room.
exactly.
Which is true. And I think the good point is especially for archery, sometimes that's what you need, is that extra 5 seconds. And I'm not experienced in archery, but it's obvious that you have to get much closer to these animals, and every second counts, and it increases your odds. But then he went on to say that clothing needs to meet the technical specs. So if it's cold, it has to be warm. If it's windy, it has to be wind blocking, hot, breathable, and wicking, raining, waterproof. And then for long packing hunts, it needs to repel your human stink factor. So for this guy's Sneeze, I think it's a difficult thing to answer, but I thought that was a really good way to look at it. Was like, what factors are you going to be in? You need to be dressed for all of those different places that you're going to be in, or the weather that you're going to encounter throughout it. So I thought that was a good one. There was another guy that says Sooner DG was his name. He says he wears camo on almost every hunt. For the reason that those are his hunting clothes. So he doesn't have a closet full of hunting clothes because he doesn't need them. He wears his hunting clothes just for hunting. So
and you're not washing them all the time. You're not getting like detergent smell on them and all that.
That's what he went on to say, was that these are the clothes that he takes precautions to keep separate from other clothes, household things, so they don't absorb any extra odors, obviously, right? So he said they're washed, stored separately, and it's just too much effort to do that if you have multiple sets of clothing.
Yeah.
What else did he say? And then he went on to say that he doesn't put on until he actually gets out of the truck, and as soon as he gets back, he stores it away. So taking it pretty serious. And then he said wearing head-to-toe camo when you aren't hunting is just tacky. And there's a lot of guys who just wear it as normal clothing. So I tend to agree with that one.
Yeah.
Kev, you're going to like this one, and I picked it because of some of your recent purchase. So this is from the Alberta Outdoorsman Forum. And this is Fisherman. I think we might have read one of this guy's comments before. So he saw a report in Financial Magazine about QU. Is that how you say that?
Mm-hmm.
Which, if anybody doesn't know, and Kev's got a good story to kind of talk about these guys, they're a relatively new hunting clothing company. And he said he thinks they sold somewhere around 50 million US a year or two ago with all their online stores out of one place in California. So he said that camo is a serious addiction for hunters and non-hunters. Even if it doesn't increase harvest rates, hunters will always love camo, which is a good point. People just like it. He also mentioned Sitka as another young company that's done really well. So he said, in fairness to QU and hunters who waste money on all kinds of unproven stuff, and then he said, full disclosure, he wears QU camo. He said they developed some of the smartest outdoor wear in the world, and for that reason, non-hunters also prefer their clothing because it's smart the way they've designed all this stuff, right?
Yeah, you watch their videos and they put a lot of effort into like what does a customer need, what do they want, and they test everything thoroughly themselves. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's
the quality
all.
just seems unreal, and they go through and explain everything to the customer of how it's made, where it's sourced.
Yeah.
So Kev, you actually went to their store in California.
I did, yeah. So month and a half or so ago, went down to Southern California on holiday, and on my way back decided to stop in Dixon, California at the KUIU showroom, which unfortunately is the only kind of storefront or showroom that KUIU has, but it was well worth the detour on the trip to go. They have their full lineup, every product, every size, everything you want to try on right there. I'll give a plug to Tiffany. She was working that day, and she's super helpful and knowledgeable about hunting, and had some good conversations about public land versus private land. But just
go into detail on that, because that's really interesting. You can come back to it if you want.
Well, I just kind of asked them, like, where is the closest hunting to here? Because Dixon is just outside of Sacramento, kind of central California.
I don't think California is a big hunting state.
No, well, it's kind of interesting. You get into some remote areas and you think, how is this California? But like on the Sierra Nevada side, right?
Yeah.
Northern California is really interesting too.
It is, yeah, it's beautiful.
Ton of elk in there.
Yeah. Well, we were driving through Nevada on our way south and stopped in the desert at this random gas station. And we go inside and there's a huge elk head mounted on the wall. And I'm looking around like, we're in the middle of the desert. Where did this thing come from? But drive a little further down the road and there's the Sierra Nevadas and there's tons of elk around. So,
yeah.
But, as far as the public land, she is saying there's not really a whole lot of access to any public land in California. Everything's kind of privately owned now, and to hunt in California, you've got to get permission from landowners. And she was quite jealous about us being able to hunt in BC and how well our resources are managed here. So yeah, she had a lot of good things to say.
When you grow up with it, you sort of take it for granted a little bit, because it's just the norm for us to go out there.
And we mentioned that on the last podcast in terms of what tags do you apply for. It's like, I want to apply for as many as we can because people paid thousands and thousands of dollars to do this. And I mean, still, it's about meat and all that kind of stuff, but at the same time, it's about experience. It's about a couple things. The Kuyu thing from a business perspective is interesting to me because, like, what other market would you be able to have one storefront, and as long as you have the quality, not the quantity, and like hunters as a market are extremely, like, they pay attention. They're always researching. They're willing to pay extra money for the advantage, right?
Right. Yeah.
And the survival and all that stuff. And I think Kuyu is a perfect example of that. Like, you got to pay for us. We got to either go down there like you did, or we got to order it online and pay the exchange rate and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of folks are buying it without even trying it on.
Sure.
Like, they're just hoping that the size works, right? And I'm sure Kuyu has awesome service where you can phone them and figure that all out. But yeah, I just think it's really interesting that it speaks to hunters as a market and a community.
Yeah, I saw, I was reading some forum about Kuyu, and someone kind of slagged it about their business model and how it would never work. But I think that you hit it right there, is that hunters are sort of a different breed of consumers, right? They do their research first, and they're not just going to fall into what looks best or you know, because it's popular, you know. But
yeah, I think they definitely found their niche.
yeah.
Yep.
And Jason, the founder of Kuyu, is a big hunter himself, right? So he's not just putting things out there that he thinks are going to be good. He tests them himself and has a whole line of, you know, employees that are testing these things in the real world. So
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I just think if hunting was an easy thing to do, you probably wouldn't have those types of stories. But it's an extremely hard thing to do, and I think everybody's looking for the quality and the advantage and the best of the best to help them. And yeah, it's a good story, really.
I mean, you don't want to pay thousands of dollars and be out on a sheep hunt in Alaska or something.
Yeah,
and your gear fail you.
Yeah.
Right. And you've flown into a remote location. Like, no, that's not gonna
Exactly.
that's not gonna fly. Right.
Exactly.
So,
Cool. Yeah. There was a couple more, but sort of the things that kept coming up over and over again was that for waterfowl hunting and turkey hunting in particular, that camo becomes something that's really necessary for those types of things because they have really good vision and
exactly. Sheep.
Yeah, that one didn't come up, but that's probably true as well. And then the other thing that a lot of guys said that it'll just help break up your outline because I can't say this for sure, but it sounds like within a certain yardage, deer will be able to see you, but beyond that, you're sort of just a bit of a blur, so they can make out your shape somewhat. And if you can help break that up and sort of blend into your surroundings a bit more, it's going to improve your odds. So
I think I mentioned that as an example. I was following, this was in an earlier, I don't know which episode, but I was walking around with my bow one season, and I was walking down this little road, the gas line, and I spooked a deer out of the bush, and it jumped out because it reacted. I don't think it knew what it was doing. It just figured something was coming, so it jumped out onto the road, and it was going to book it if it was a predator or something. So it jumped out into the middle of the road, facing away from me. I'm about 40, 50 yards away from it. But the road kind of had an incline behind me. So all I had to do was stand still. I had all my camo on, and I just blended into the road from his perspective.
right.
And he kind of turned around and he looked. And I don't know, I could just tell that he did not recognize that I was standing there. I didn't move a muscle. And he just kind of looked, and he moved back around, and he walked a little further, and I would follow him a little bit. He would hear something, and he'd look back again. I'd stop. So for me, that is an example of, I did feel like the camo was helping. I had a camo hat, a camo jacket, pants, everything was camo. My bow was camo. I was camoed out.
yeah.
So I think I saw it, and I felt in real life that it was working.
Right.
So
it's funny because there's a guy who shared like a identical story to that, and then right after, the guy posted and said, "I've done the same thing wearing Carhartts and a wife beater, or whatever it was." So it's like
maybe that's the case. I don't know.
So yeah, I think the best way to sum it up is that if it increases your odds, why not? It's always good to keep your hunting clothes separate from your hiking clothes or whatever it is. So
it hits your wallet, but I think you're right.
One thing I found while we're talking about deer and their vision here is I came across this thing that was a bunch of myths about deer. And one of the things that it said is that deer aren't actually colorblind. They're red and green colorblind. However, they can see the color blue 20 times better than we can.
Yeah. So, and I read that kind of a while back. They said never wear blue. Yeah. Avoid blue at all costs. Because they have that ultraviolet. They can see the ultraviolet blue.
Yeah. And then they said that it's also the reason that deer see best at dawn and dusk. And then it says, ever notice how blue everything looks during those times? Deer certainly do. And that's one of several reasons why they move most during those two times. Yep. Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's why they're all on the roads and highways at that time.
Yeah.
They only run for the blue trucks.
So I don't really have any camo. I wear more earth tone stuff, and a lot of guys sort of said they do the same. Rifle hunting, people seem to think that was totally fine. But if you get into the bow hunting or anything that's a little bit closer, then you might want to consider
your advantages are worth so much more at that point.
So I think Sneeze, I hope that answers your question. As far as brands go, it depends on your budget and if you actually want camo. But, a lot of these guys are saying that the best thing about camo is it's designed for hunting. So pockets where you need them, that sort of thing. They're going to be a little bit quieter than your average, rain-proof jacket's going to be pretty noisy, whereas a hunting one's going to be designed to be a little bit quieter. So you kind of you almost need a set of clothing for every different type of weather, season, and all that kind of stuff. So,
and Kevin brought his Kuiu stuff in.
Yeah.
One of them's what model jacket is it?
It's the Guide DCS jacket. Yeah.
And like even when you pulled it out of the pack, it didn't make any noise really.
Right.
Like it just, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it looks
and that's
really
the
nice.
stuff that like you move a muscle and it doesn't make a noise. That might be the difference, right? Pretty impressive.
Yeah, I've got a North Face jacket that's whoosh, whoosh,
sounds like a garbage bag.
Yeah,
that's what my Patagonia is like too. This is more of a like rock climbing Gore-Tex jacket, not a hunting jacket.
So I don't think he should go out and blow all his money on really expensive shit in the beginning as far as camo jackets and stuff go. We've sort of mentioned that your optics and your footwear are going to be some of the most important things that you're going to
I agree.
need. So
hunt with some guys, you'll run into friends and all these people that you hunt with that will have some different gear, and you can kind of go through those experiences and learn from their good decisions or bad decisions depending on what they spent their money on.
Yeah, I mean, you could spend a fortune on hunting gear, right? And then, but you look at like Dale, who probably never really had that great of gear ever, and you think about the number of animals that he took over his lifetime.
He was the same way with fishing, like very basic gear, although he had like a ton of lures and flies and all that kind of stuff. So he never really splurged on like the nicest stuff, but one of the most successful fishermen on the Columbia River, probably. Yeah. And as far as hunting goes, extremely successful as well. And he didn't, well, I've talked about the binoculars that I was using that were his, and they're, fuck me, man. Even I was getting mad that we'd bug him about those being horrible. He's like, he could see fine out of them, I guess. They weighed.
Imagine how many animals he would have took with new binoculars.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just all about what you have and how you use it. So just consider where you're spending your money, and you know, once you buy these nice things, those are things that you're going to have for probably your entire hunting career, right? Or most of it anyways. So it is worth it to save up and buy one nice thing as often as you can afford it.
But you can buy expensive crap too, so you gotta do your research.
Well, yeah, there's a tipping point of fucking wasting money. You know what I mean? Like, especially when you get into optics, you can spend crazy amounts of money, and I don't think that's really gonna help you all that much. Some guys just like to have the best shit, right? So
yeah, we have the benefit of the internet now, so ideally you can find, it's so competitive, right, for these companies. So you should be able to find the company that provides the best value and the best compromise for what you want. Vortex, I find, is one of those companies, as far as optics goes.
Yeah. I would even, one more thing about Kuiu, like, I don't find their prices to be astronomical for the quality of their stuff either, but
yeah, I noticed that too. I was looking for an insulation layer, and I was looking at their down jacket versus their 3DFX jacket, which is kind of like I think we talked about the Nano Air Patagonia. It's like a synthetic insulation, but it actually breathes, so you don't have to take it off when you're hiking up the mountain and then put it back on again. Whereas with down or something, you have to. And down also squishes under your pack, and it loses its
that
insulation, right?
Fjallraven jacket that I have, it's the same kind of thing. It's a synthetic, and when it's cool out, you can still wear it. Like, Ashley and I went for a bike ride last night, and I was wearing that thing. She's like, "Why the fuck are you wearing a winter jacket?" Like, I'm cool. I'm comfortable in this thing right now. Like, it was, so it was around 8:00, so there was a bit of a breeze, and it was cooling down, and it was perfect. But it's also really nice when it's cold out too. So. Those are super useful as a camp jacket, and
you can pack it down.
Oh yeah, you can stuff it into your pack easily into something pretty small.
But yeah, like the Kuiu, they got the 2 options, which is cool. But I did notice that their pricing wasn't astronomical. It is because the Canadian dollar is pretty crappy.
Yeah, for us it's a lot more.
Yeah, like you compare it to all these other brands like Patagonia and First Light and all these other brands, and they're either right in that ballpark or even sometimes below it, and they're always looking for ways to produce that material or product but at a lower cost without sacrificing the quality, I find.
Yeah. So I got nothing against camo and improving your odds. You can't go wrong. So the short answer to his question, I think, is yes and no. Right.
Hope that helps.
Yeah. Good luck, man. You guys had a couple of news articles that you wanted to go over. There's some shit going down in our neck of the woods.
Well, yeah, there's one guy in Kelowna region, actually, and this happened back in November, I think, is when the actual violation happened. But in May, I think he was actually charged. But he took an immature moose instead, he took a mature moose when only spike moose were legal.
Okay.
So along with the loss of his rifle and hunting privileges, he was fined with $2,000, which a bulk of that would go to the Conservation Trust.
Right.
But I think it was a 3-year loss of hunting privileges.
So I read that because Kev sent it to us. It didn't say if it was an accident or not.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I made a note of this was I feel like this could be an example of them trying to set a precedent so that, like, regardless, accident or not, you guys have to be paying attention a little more, right? So take your time, make sure you're looking at, I think it's easy to identify an immature spike compared to a mature moose. Right. I would think.
I would think.
It could be worth, the difference between one side versus the other though, right? Yeah. When you're looking at their antlers.
Yeah.
So
I just think regardless.
Yeah.
If you're pulling that trigger, you've got to know 100%.
There's no excuse. Right? Yeah. So I think there's a line between poaching and making a mistake. And if you do make a mistake, you need to report it, right?
Yeah.
And, poaching is a whole other thing. But if you fuck up, you got to own up to your mistake and let a conservation officer know what happened.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between you thought you did your due diligence, you made a mistake, calling the conservation officer and dealing with it, rather than
Avoiding
taking the shot. You made a mistake, field dressing it, throwing it in your truck, and hoping nobody notices.
Yeah.
Like, there's a big difference there.
Yeah.
So as much as that would suck, it can happen. So I'm not being sympathetic for this guy, but you got to own up to it if it does happen, right? It could be, as something as you thought a whitetail was a mule deer. That could happen, right?
Sure.
Sometimes they look fairly similar.
I think they're even saying that they might be breeding together.
They are, yeah,
Yeah.
in some instances. So, we'll look at it that way. If he made a mistake, then I feel like what those fines were and the suspension and stuff like that might be reasonable. For somebody who gets caught poaching, I think you should lose your license forever.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, that's a conscious decision.
Versus I fucked up and I didn't own
Yeah.
up to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it should be a lot stiffer penalty for someone that's actually a poacher.
So I don't know what the reasons for not, suspending their license completely, but maybe the thought is that, like, if you suspend their license, they're might be more likely to poach anyways, because now you've taken that away from them completely. I have no idea. Yeah. But I always think you should probably fine the shit out of these guys, take away their license, take away their firearms, their truck, whatever was involved in that poaching should be taken away from those guys.
Yeah, I read another article, someone from Abbotsford or somewhere in the Lower Mainland that shot a moose out of season, and they had their brand new Ford Raptor seized as forfeit. Didn't get it back. And,
Good.
That's a $50,000+ truck, right?
Oh, that's 60, 70. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
But it's amazing how much teeth the Wildlife Act has compared to other legislation where people break the law. I know this is a hunting show, but drinking and driving, right? You see these convictions and the penalties these people are facing. Like, it's serious. No one's joking around. You're going to be punished for it. So,
yeah, which is good.
Yeah.
I think it's in Sweden where it's drinking and driving. If you get caught, you lose your license forever.
Yeah, it's a no tolerance.
Yeah. So, maybe we should take more of that approach, but I don't know what the thought is behind it, but I would like to see these guys sort of fucked a little bit more for doing stupid shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else did you guys have?
I think this story came out of Surrey recently. Surrey, BC. It's near Vancouver. Somebody identified the remains of a kind of disposed bear remains in a garbage can in a park. So I don't know. I feel like when the news gets a hold of something like that, they spin it into murder of a bear story when it should actually be irresponsible hunter disposal story.
Right.
Like they went through this whole Oscar. They went through this whole story. So, like, multiple paragraphs of they found this bear in a garbage can. This is not acceptable. Why are people killing bears? Like, that's kind of the feel of the article. Right. But then at the very end, they said, Constable says that bears were actually in season. They're looking into it.
So that was at the bottom.
At the bottom.
Yeah.
So they use it as a story against hunting. And then at the bottom, they say, it could just be a hunter that disposed of something irresponsibly.
Right.
Where I think it should be the other way around. Or maybe just the end.
Yeah.
So
Shock value.
Yeah, and I think that it goes back to our earlier discussions of be a responsible hunter because all of us pay for your actions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't put the bear on the hood of your car and drive through your neighborhood with it when you shoot something. Put it in the box, and when you dispose of it, go back up into the
where you
bush and
shot
do
it,
it
yeah.
discreetly.
Yeah.
Like all you're doing is ruining it for everybody,
Yeah.
because there's a lot more non-hunters than hunters, and if they want to shut it down, they probably could. Like they have a better chance of shutting it down, I think, than,
Yeah.
you know, the numbers kind of speak for themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, totally.
It gets into politics, but I just think we got to respect the non-hunters, and they'll respect us
Yeah. Same for the vegans.
and the vegans.
Oh, good.
It's pretty interesting reading some forums that it's not even hunters versus non-hunters. It's hunters versus hunters, right? And they're
Yeah,
really,
exactly.
really charged conversations.
Yeah.
A lot of politics coming into it. So yeah, there's so much to discuss.
It's funny because there's like you say, there's hunters versus hunters, and then there's non-hunters, some of them, versus the hunters, but they don't realize that there's this internal battle
Right.
going on within the hunting community too. So I don't know. I think we mentioned it before, is hunters are going to get thrown into the same bucket by the public regardless. Like that's kind of frustrating to think that, because I think the public is totally against trophy hunting. I think we're kind of against trophy hunting too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just sucks being thrown in the same bucket, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not against having a trophy from your meat hunt.
Exactly. Because
Right.
it's a memory and a accomplishment,
Right.
and a lot of things that I know non-hunters, it's tough to understand. But there's so much work that goes into that. Like you ate it, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's all
The primary goal of a hunt, and I think all of our opinions should be the meat. But if you have something that's beautiful,
Yeah.
are you just like, is the alternative throwing it away? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're almost making use of more of the animal if you
Yeah.
preserve it in that way.
Yeah.
Some people don't like to see it. I think for me, I would love to have like a big set of moose antlers, like even here on the wall or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's just something magical about them.
Yeah.
They're like the fastest organism known to man, the fastest growing
Growing, yeah.
organism.
Yeah. And it's almost like a portrait of that experience, right? So when you look at that, you think of, the trip, the guys you were with, the stories from that, the struggle, the camp food you were eating, the beers you had, the laughs, everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much more than just, I want to have that on my wall because I collect this shit.
Yeah.
It is an accomplishment, I think. As
Yeah.
weird as that might sound for somebody who doesn't hunt, but you have to consider the hours, the training, the money, the time, like all that stuff combined. So when somebody finally gets something, it's not like you just drive out there and there's an animal and you shoot it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more failure than success
Exactly.
when you're out there. So
Well, I've got an example too. Like my grandpa is about 87, I think.
mm-hmm.
And he, in the last few years, the dementia's kind of really taken hold, right? And like you go over there to visit him and he's kind of like, oh, so where are you working now? And you'll tell him a story, and 10 minutes later you'll say, oh, so where are you working now? 10 minutes later you tell him again. So, but the cool thing about hunting, like he was a big hunter his whole life with a very close friend that he's had for like 60, 70 years. Like they're still both around and close friends even now. And you talk about all the experiences. Like now that I started hunting, I was talking to him about hunting, and I've never done that in 30 years.
Right.
They start talking to him about hunting, and he's like, oh yeah, like all these stories start coming out from 40, 50 years ago. Like, oh, I remember when him and I were up in this whatever road, and
Big Dick.
Yeah, Dick. He had to drive this truck down. These people from Alberta had come to hunt in BC. A big snowstorm came in, Forest Road was sketching them out. He got in their truck, drove their truck down. Dick was in his truck, drove their truck. Like all the stories were perfectly clear. Same trip, they got a moose and they put the moose in the packs. They pieces of it. They tried to field dress it as much as they could. They had to pack all of it back to the truck in pieces. And on one of the trips to and from the moose, he ended up falling backwards into a creek.
Jeez.
Because there's like 100 pounds of weight, and I can't imagine the packs back then were carbon fiber, right?
Yeah.
Carbon fiber frames.
Backboard.
Yeah. So, but just going through all those stories, I mean, 87 years old, you can't remember what happened yesterday, but he definitely remembers every single hunting trip that he was
crazy.
on.
Yeah.
And like, those are major memories, right?
For sure.
And I think that is what that symbol on your wall, whether it's like my father-in-law has a mountain goat, a caribou, and his latest is a big whitetail, like a 6x6 whitetail that he won an award for. Actually, it's just massive, and you go down there and you look at that thing, and it's just like majestic.
Yeah.
And I understand the side that like, okay, that's in a way it's kind of like weird, right? But on the other hand, it's amazing at the same time. And for him, it's a totally different thing. It's his experience.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you brought up something about some news thing that was like, do you agree with trophy hunting or not? And it was a poll thing. So like trying to define what trophy hunting is. And, for guys who are just out there for a trophy and nothing else, none of us would agree with that. But
yeah, like if you want to go out and hunt a wolf just to have a stuffed wolf on your stare, or a grizzly bear. I don't know if you can really eat grizzly bear. Maybe you can. Somebody can comment on it, but I think it's typically viewed as a trophy hunt.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but
I think based on their diet, they're not
blows
really.
my mind. I can't even.
What's that?
Start on just a grizzly bear trophy hunt. Just totally disagree with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the act of going out to kill a grizzly bear for a trophy.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. That's kind of what is like, where is the definition? I think that scenario is definitely the definition of a trophy hunt, but where are these news articles drawing the line? Like, are they going to call me a trophy hunter because I passed on the 3-point buck and I ended up getting a 7-point? I don't know. Are we a trophy hunter then? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, to me that would imply it's a bigger animal and you're getting more meat out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is the whole point of hunting. So for us.
So
yeah. It's going back to the wolf thing. I'm sort of facing that a little bit with bear. And if you talked to us a year ago, we would have said, no, I'm not interested in hunting bear. Yeah. But we've, again, it's been like a year of reading shit and kind of thinking about it and all that kind of stuff. And we came around to it. And you start to realize like that in the right season, a bear is going to be really good meat. Plus, the other side of it is that you can use so much more of that animal in comparison to other animals, right?
Oh, it's one of the most underrated resources in the wilderness as far as animals go.
I was talking to a guy in here the other day, a really experienced hunter in the Okanagan, and I was asking him about bear hunting because I was curious what he thought about and let him know that we were doing it. He's like, yeah, no, I'm not really interested in it because the meat's disgusting. And so I didn't really get into it with him, but this is a guy who's been hunting for probably 40 years or something like that. Mm-hmm. And just had that in his mind that a bear's not good meat. So, that's what was my original thought too, but a little bit of research goes the same way. So you kind of face a little bit of people being like, why do you want to hunt a black bear? I think it gets roped in with a grizzly bear, that you're just hunting a bear for sport and nothing else. But when you look into it, you can do so much more with a black bear and make use of so much meat that's going to be...
And there's black bears all over the place.
Yeah.
There's an excess of them, right? Yeah. And I wonder if, because it's not the animal that everybody hunts, like the people that have passed on this myth of bear meat's bad, are they basing it on like their dad or their dad's dad that shot a grizzly bear or a black bear and maybe didn't know that you got to get the, like, I think with the bear, you have to get the meat out very fast. You have to cool it fast. It's like a big jug of milk sitting there that can spoil at the same rate of the milk, right?
Right.
So you really have to be cognizant of, you're in the spring, the temperatures are high, you got to act fast, you got to be clean, all that kind of stuff. And I wonder if some of those myths were passed on by people that maybe left a bear overnight in conditions they shouldn't have, and then they tried to eat it or whatever.
Or somebody who got one in the fall when spawning was happening and these bears were eating dead fish, or a bear that had been eating fucking garbage. So we go way out of our way to make sure that we're far away from civilization so they can't be getting into garbage. And we're focused on the spring because we know that their diet is going to affect the taste of the meat. So all those factors, and coastal bears apparently are not good eating because they have access to the ocean and they're going to eat shit that washes up on the shore and all that. So there's so much more to consider, but you can plan around those things and harvest a good bear, I think. We'll find out hopefully this spring, but we'll report back on how good it is. But I've been hearing more good things than bad things lately from guys who are going out and do it. Yeah.
Right on.
Anything you guys want to add before we wrap this sucker up?
I had something and I lost it when I started talking about the black bear, but maybe if it's important, I'll remember it for the next podcast.
You know what was interesting was when you and I were out the last time on the quad there, and we went down that road and we ran into all those guys that were in that area for rock climbing, and the looks that they gave us because they saw the rifles and everything was like, fuck these guys, right? And the thing that struck me right away was like, I have the same values and respect for the outdoors that you guys have, but just because we're out doing this, like they just had that look of like, fuck these guys, right?
I think it's a little bit of us portraying a perception on them of what we think they're thinking, but it's also, like you say, I'm sure there's a little bit of that going on.
Yeah.
It may be a lot of it, I'm not sure, but their little dog was chasing us out of the area. But I mean, we were respectful. We drove in there on the ATV and we saw people and we immediately turned around and left. So
the other thing that was interesting is we talked about hunters leaving a mess behind as far as shells and whatever. We found fucking TVs and stereos and shit that had been blasted apart. But I had gone into that same areas, which is heavily used by rock climbers before, and found a whole bunch of garbage in there. So I think in every outdoor sport or anything you can think of, there's always going to be a few shitheads that sort of give that group of people a bad reputation, right? So all those guys look like they were out there, they were camping and shit like that, out there all for the right reasons and enjoying being outside and stuff like that. But again, even in that sport, there's going to be a few guys who just don't give a fuck about, everybody else who's involved in the sport. So you kind of get the same thing. And I just realized that it's, you can't get away from it. It's not just hunters who are out there. Mountain bikers could do the same thing. There could be a couple guys who ruin the reputation for the other guys, right? 90% of them are out there for the same reasons and respecting the outdoors, where a couple of guys might not so much. So
good point.
Yeah. It's not just, in hunting. It's
all over.
A couple of shitheads ruin it for everybody.
For sure.
Yeah. Did your thought come back to you?
It didn't, so
I was
I guess it wasn't important.
No. Kev, what are your plans for this hunting season?
Well, maybe I'll get out with you guys. I'm not sure for bear. I'm not totally sure I'm into shooting a bear myself yet at this point, but I'd like to get out and, like we said, it's about being out there and experiencing it, right? So maybe it's something I might be interested in myself in the future. So
yeah, we do find that the scenery and just being out there in the spring when you're not freezing to death in some cases. In the fall, it gets pretty close.
Yeah.
But yeah, spring is a whole different ball game. It's interesting. There's a lot of new animals out there, and they're all in different patterns, and they're kind of doing a bunch of different things. So it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, speaking of patterns, driving through my hometown just today, and downtown, like in someone's front yard, is a fawn, like, smaller than Oscar, with all the spots all over its back and nursing from a doe. Like, it was out of place, obviously, being in the middle of town, but pretty cool to see as well. Yeah.
So, Kevin, it was your birthday yesterday.
Oh, was it?
It was, yeah. You turned 19 yesterday, so
Yep.
he's having his first beer here.
Now I remember.
And I got you something, or Ashley and I did, that might change your mind about bear hunting. I think you probably know what it is already. It's hunting related, so you can open that thing up. But I think all of us have this now.
Oh.
And that's kind of the book that really changed my thoughts about hunting bear. So there's some cool things in there that you can read.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah. The Complete Guide to Hunting, Butchering, and Cooking Wild Game, Volume 1 by Steve Rinella.
Yeah. We've mentioned this book quite a few times, and I think it's a fucking amazing resource. He's got the second one out now. Volume 2 is for small game.
Yeah, I picked that one up, but we just haven't really gotten into small game. Although I did pick up the Ruger 1022. So
right.
Yeah. Rabbits,
grouse.
Yep.
Spoons. But no, just on a tangent, this Ruger 1022, I'd recommend it for anybody that wants a cheap 22.
That thing's sweet.
It's a 10 meg. I'm sure everybody that hunts knows this thing. It's one of the most highest selling 22s in the history of North America, but it's got a rotating mag.
Oh yeah.
So you throw it in there. It's got 10 shots, and you can. It's like as close to a machine gun as you can get. It's a semi-auto, and you just
nice
right through all 10.
The grouse will have no chance.
It's fun to shoot, just targets. But yeah, if you got to shoot a grouse, you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Can you get a larger magazine for it?
You can.
Can you get those big drum ones that you
can? It's. I think you can get. It's the leading gun for how many attachments you can put on it.
Oh, nice.
So I don't know if it's legal to actually hunt with one of those any more than 10.
I don't think it is.
But you can probably for target shooting and things like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, awesome book.
Thank you very much.
We, no worries,
Excited.
man. You don't have that, right?
No, I don't.
Okay, good.
No.
The bear stuff in there is really interesting because he talks about making use of the bear fat and how you can cook that down and use it for cooking other things. And he was saying, like, if a bear's been eating blueberries, that fat is going to taste like blueberries. So it's pretty cool to think about, cooking in bear fat, even cooking the bear in its fat.
Yeah.
So it sounds pretty delicious. So when I was reading through that, and Stephen Rinella actually got trichinosis from eating bear meat, and he's since come back to eating it again.
Yeah.
Loves it, and he's feeding it to his kids and everything. It took time, I think, to get back to that point.
I wonder, maybe Steve can contact us to discuss this, but I almost feel like in his subconscious he wanted to get trichinosis.
You never know.
Because he's had everything, and he almost treats it as a badge of honor. Like, he also wants to be attacked by a bear just so he can have the scar across his chest, basically.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think that he almost wanted. He's the guy that says before every episode of Meat Eater, almost, that you should, make sure you cook it to 160, and you don't want to get trichinosis. But then he ends up getting it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's what I want to talk about was the smoker, and some of the bear recipes, like smoking a ham and shit like that. Bear ham sounds like it's fucking magnifique. You got to roll out.
I was just wondering if we could take a quick 5-minute break.
Got to take a piss. Well, we can wrap this up. You get your legs twitching.
Oh man, it's like we're getting to the brink.
There's a couple of bottles right next to you there if you want to go. But anyways, you guys should we leave it there then? Will you take a piss? We'll call this an episode.
Well, yeah, I guess it depends. If you can edit it seamlessly.
Let's just call this the end here. I got nothing else to talk about unless you guys do.
All right. Well, thanks very much for inviting me in. I've been looking forward to this for a while now, and love the podcast. And
thanks for coming in, and happy birthday. We should have bought you the beer, but you brought it, so
I don't know.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
that. And yeah, for anybody that's commenting or giving us ratings, reviews, thank you. We really do appreciate it. We're ahead of Meat Eater, so Steven's got to come in and do an interview with us now. I think that's how it works, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks a lot for tuning in. We'll let Kelly take off before he pisses his pants here. So
Thank God.
Happy hunting. Take care.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, I'm in pain.